Today, we are speaking with Tammy Lofink and Sylvia Blair. Tammy is the author of the new self-published book called Reclaiming My Life, and Sylvia is the co-author of this book. Tammy is a wife and mother of two children and experienced a parent's worst nightmare. At the age of 18, her son, Robert Mason Lofink, died of a drug overdose. The grief, suffering, and turmoil which followed were almost too much to bear, and Tammy decided that she had to change the direction of her life after her son was gone. She co-founded Rising Above Addiction and is the president of the nonprofit. Sylvia is a Maryland freelance writer and owner of Blair Copywriting and Communications. She writes about health, education, and business for a variety of clients. Reclaiming My Life is the second book that she has worked on. And Sylvia helped Tammy to write the book as well as interview different sources. Prior to becoming a freelance writer, she worked for a college and a national nonprofit health organization. So thank you both for coming on and chatting with us today. We're so excited to have you both. Tammy, can you start off by telling me a little bit more about your story and about how Rising Above Addiction started?
Sure. So my son, Robert, we always struggled with trying to get him help. When he was starting in his teens and middle school, he started experimenting with alcohol, with marijuana, and it just progressed until the point it got very bad. At 17 years old, we put him into a rehabilitation center, and a year later, we thought he was doing well. He had finished high school. He had signed up for a college course, and he was working full time. And then on September 14th, 2014, we found him at home in his bed. He had overdosed from an opiate overdose.
Wow, that's hard. That must have been, as a parent, I can't imagine, waking up and finding that your son has passed and overdosed. So was that yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say that I always felt like when we were all home that we were safe, and I tended to worry about Robert when he was out of the house. So that morning I had gotten up, I had worked out, I went for a run, and meanwhile, as far as I knew, he was just sleeping in his bedroom, and it wasn't until around lunchtime when his girlfriend came over and went upstairs to check on him that I heard the screams. So yeah, it taught me a huge lesson about control and what we can control, because I always thought my kids were safe at home, and I never worried when they were home.
Wow, that's pretty powerful, because I'm sure a lot of parents feel the same, that if you have your kids home, you can kind of watch over them and make sure that they're okay. And when they're out, that's where the real problem lies. But yes, you found that that's not always the case.
Yes. So when parents are afraid, parents are always afraid to kick their kids out or set limits. And I was too. And so, yeah, that was a hard lesson to realize that even at home, things can happen.
Tammy, you have a daughter, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel that has affected raising your daughter a little differently? Do you feel like it has a little bit?
It has. I mean, I worry about her more, but it's also, I've been given gifts from my son's death, and I realize that life is short and that we have to live and treasure the moments. And she's doing exceptionally well. She's in her final year of a nursing program, and she's going to apply to PA school, and it's just doing miraculously through all she's been through, because she was in 10th grade when it happened. Wow. But you sort of hold your family tighter and closer.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad she's doing well.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you feel like this experience, or do you think this experience kind of brought you all closer together? And in what ways do you feel like that happened?
Yeah, so for probably the first couple years, my daughter, my son's girlfriend, and I stuck together like glue. As we said in the book, we were kind of each other's life preservers. And even though we were grieving separately, we were all so close, and I think there was safety in that. And my daughter and I are super close. I mean, she's a mini me, and I treasure her and thank God for her every day. I don't know what I would do without her or where I would be.
Yeah, it's good to have those lifelines in those moments.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
How do you feel like this, and do you feel like this was a catalyst for Rising Above Addiction to get started?
So I knew when he had died, I knew that I had to do something to help myself survive, but I also wanted to help other people. I didn't want anyone else to have to go through what I had been through. And so on the year anniversary of his death, we started Rising Above Addiction, which is a nonprofit, and we raise money through different fundraisers that we put on, and also we get generous donations from the public, and that money goes towards helping people get into treatment in any capacity, whether it be clothing, co-payments for inpatient treatment, sober living expenses, anything across the board.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you know about how many people to date that you've been able to help through Rising Above Addiction?
Well, I guess it would be a combination, because it's not all about the financial end of it. A lot of times, and it's probably almost every day, that I get a call and I help families navigate their loved ones getting to treatment, or I help individuals. They will call me. Through the 2 sober homes that I have, so many girls have passed through, and thousands probably at this point. And it's such a blessing to be able to, it keeps his memory alive, and I feel like he has just saved so many lives.
Wow, that's powerful. So in starting Rising Above Addiction, were you then able to open the 2 sober homes? How did you kind of figure that was a need within the community?
So I pretty early on became a community partner with our state's attorney's office. And back when we first started, detox wasn't covered by state insurance. So I would get calls from Tim Weber, who was their drug treatment liaison. If somebody overdosed and needed to get to detox, I would fund that. And through those connections, and then further along with the health department, I gained relationships. And through those relationships, I was asked to open a girls' sober home because it was so needed in the community. So I didn't really know a lot about sober homes then, and now I know a lot. But and that was in 2017. And then last December, we opened another one. And the first one's named after my son. That's called Reclaiming My Life. And we use his initials. His initials are RML. And then the second sober home is called Keeping My Serenity. And that house is named after Kristen Marie Spurrier, who passed away from an overdose.
Wow.
Tammy, I had a quick question about the women's sober home. I got a chance to look at your website. How did you come across Kristen's story and decide that you wanted to name the girls' sober home after her?
So I was approached by a man named Brad, and he used to be her softball coach, and he wanted to do a softball tournament in her memory. So through him, I was introduced to her mom, and we've just become so close. And I had always said if I ever open another girls' sober home, I want it to be named after her. We just immediately had a connection, the mother and I, and that tends to happen when somebody loses their child. You just form an instant bond, and her mom Valerie and I did. So, and I almost feel like I know her just through knowing her mom and hearing all the stories.
That's amazing. Is her mom involved with this house at all?
She is, and we have a picture of Rob in Reclaiming My Life and a picture of Kristen in Keeping My Serenity, and it's a picture that sits right at the front door. And I I wanted it there because I wanted the girls each day when they were leaving for work or leaving the house as a reminder of why they're fighting so hard, and the lives that have been lost and are now helping to save them and keep them on their journey of recovery.
That's amazing. I'm sure that inspires them every day.
Yeah.
Sylvia, so how did you get connected with Tammy to write this book?
I am a freelance writer in the community, and I had an assignment from Carol magazine in Westminster, and they were asking me to do a story on the opioid epidemic a few years ago. So I was referred to Tammy, and I heard about her sober home, so I visited her at Reclaiming My Life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, at the sober home that was named after Rob. And I spent time visiting with the women there and visiting with Tammy, and really it was a compelling story. The story ran in the magazine, and about a year later, we were at a business networking meeting, and we connected. She took some of my marketing materials home with her. Then she called me and she said, I really want to write a book about my life and my experience. Would you be interested? And we met at a local coffee shop, and she told me her ideas, and I felt that it was really a good story, that people would want to read it. So I said yes. And then over the course of the year, we met every week or so at her home. She made lunch, and we brought our computers, and together we brainstormed. She told me her story from beginning to end, and now a year later, we actually have a book.
Wow, that's amazing. I like that story. So through this journey, you have become very involved with the community, Tammy. How did this journey connect you to the state's attorney and the health department? I did notice that on your website.
I was introduced pretty early on. I had gone to an event at the Arts Center on Main Street in Westminster, and it was an event that was held through the state's attorney's office, I think, and the health department, where they did plays with high school students and did, I guess, reenactments of kids being at parties and different tools and things that they could say if they were uncomfortable. And that's where I was introduced to Tim Weber. And from there, I was introduced to the Community Foundation of Carroll County, which my nonprofit is under. And Audrey, who was the director at the time, introduced me to Brian DiLeonardo, who's our local state's attorney. And Tim was working for him at the time as the drug treatment and education liaison. And just through that, I've been introduced to the sheriff's department, the health department, and I've just kind of developed relationships. And the good thing about our county is we all work together for this common cause. And they're very big on, instead of incarceration, getting people to treatment. So it's a very connective community.
That's amazing. So in your book, you have stories from different people you've met along the journey. What made you choose the certain stories, the specific ones that you did, and how they impacted your life?
So Brian DiLeonardo, of course, because he's the state's attorney, Ed Singer at the health department. There are two people who have such important roles in the community, and they truly care. And like Brian has just set forth all these new programs in the school, like the TIPS program. Everybody's an active participant at the Drug and Violence Expo. They've really changed things. And I feel like if I had those people in my life and those programs at the time, it could have made a world of difference. So I have so much respect for both of those organizations. And Tim Weber, I always say he's been part of saving my life. He's somebody who's in long-term recovery, saves lives every day, just has such an important role in the recovery community. and I don't know where I would be without him. And Brittany Sabach, the same. If it wasn't for her, the sober homes wouldn't really exist. She and Tim have taught me everything that I know, and they always teased me and said I had to go through them before I gave away money because the money would be gone. I have a very hard time saying no. You know, if somebody calls me in need, I just want to
Right.
give. So unfortunately, Brittany, who was working for the state's attorney's office, has recently relapsed in March, and it's been one of the hardest things since I lost Rob to get upset thinking about it. I'm very afraid of losing her, and Tim and Brittany are two people that it just wasn't, I couldn't even imagine that either one of them would ever relapse. In my mind, they've recovered from it. And it's been a real shock and education watching somebody who had it all and has lost everything, and how much the drugs destroy your life. And it's so hard because the person that I know and that taught me everything is very different than now the person using, and it's just been not a great education, but an education.
Right. Well, it's amazing that you can make this impact for the rest of the community with those houses. So Tammy, how were you able to find the light at the end of the tunnel and keep pushing through for your mission, even on hard days?
I don't know if you ever find the light. It's an everyday struggle. There are days where I feel so, I miss him so much, I can't stand it. But then I'll get a call from somebody and I'll be able to help that person get to treatment within a couple hours, where I know how hard that is. We couldn't get Robert to treatment. It was all day on the phone, and people reaching out to me and telling me what the sober homes have done for them, or what I've done for them to help them. And it's just so beautiful. I always say everything's beautiful and tragic all at the same time. It's incredible to be able to help people and know that that's because of Rob. And yes, sometimes I walk in the sober homes and I think it's overwhelming because they wouldn't be there if it weren't for Rob dying. And as hard as that is, and it's so gut wrenching, but at the same time, it's so beautiful.
It is. I noticed on your website, you mentioned it was a bittersweet kind of tragic event. So, something so tragic, but being able to turn it into something so beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah, I always say I carry around a suitcase full of sadness. It's always there, and it's parallel to every emotion, which can be hard because even when you feel happy and excited about something, it's still right there, and it's just a different world I live in now, and it's finding a new normal.
Right. It is.
Tammy, what advice would you have for parents or loved ones of those who are struggling?
To reach out for help, reach out to the community, reach out to the schools, reach out to anybody that you can, reach out to me. I always tell people I'll do whatever I can to help them and help their loved one. Trust your gut. A lot of times, and I talk about it in my book, I was so worried about what other people would think that sometimes it changed how I would parent. And I a lot of times would know in my gut what the right thing to do with Rob was. He was very different. He lived outside the box, like whereas my daughter was able to conform more and get through. And I just wish I would have listened to myself, because I think as parents we know, or the times when I would confront him and I knew he was using and he would convince me because I wanted to believe it, that he wasn't. I think as a parent, when you suspect something, normally you're right, and just get your child help.
Wow. That's powerful. Just trusting your gut and knowing that,
Yeah,
every kid is different. So even between, your daughter and your son, the way you have to parent them is completely different. So
completely
that's
different.
that's important for people to think about and remember as their kids are growing up, or if they suspect something, to remember that if you feel it, it's probably worth another look at least.
Right.
So Rising Above Addiction, what you're doing with this nonprofit is amazing. Being able to help people get treatment when you had such a hard time, and understanding that that's such a huge need is amazing. So do you help people outside of Maryland, Carroll County, or do
Yes.
you strictly focus on that area?
No, I've helped people in other states. Anywhere I can help, I will help. We've
Wow, that's
recommended
incredible.
treatment outside the state, and like with you guys, which you guys have been wonderful. I know I've helped a couple people and helped them with their co-pays, and even when you guys can't help an individual, maybe their needs can't be met there, you guys have always helped me figure out where they can go. So the treatment centers are just incredible now, very different than they were when I was trying to find help.
That's amazing. Do you guys now, or do you ever look for people to help out with the nonprofit? Do you have any kind of volunteer? Are there ways that people can get involved, even with the sober homes?
Yes, and a lot of the fundraising that we do, we'll take volunteers, and of course, financial donations are always appreciated. But any kind of help with the fundraisers. On September 25th, we're getting ready to do our annual golf tournament, and that I partner up with our drug court program, and we also, some of the proceeds go to a scholarship fund for a man who passed away, Robert Kirkland, who helped the community so much. And we always need volunteers for that. And half of the proceeds go to my organization, half go to the drug court program. And then, like I said, a portion will go to the scholarship. So, yeah, any type of help is appreciated. Even clothes for a lot of the people coming into treatment centers will come with the clothes on their back because they don't have anything else.
Yeah.
So anything helps.
That's great. And where can people find out more information about you, Rising Above Addiction, your new book?
I'm right on the website at risingaboveaddiction.com.
Awesome. Is there anything else that Tammy or Sylvia, you wanted to share about your journey, what you guys are doing next, anything that we haven't covered?
I would like to thank Tammy for the opportunity to help her write her book. As you can see, her story is very poignant, and it's engaging, and it resonates with a lot of people. So it was a chance to help people that I may not even ever meet because of her personal story.
Sylvia, how do you feel collaborating on that journey with Tammy for the book impacted your life?
Well, it really showed me a lot of what people go through when addiction is in the family, and it showed me the range of reactions, how people react, depending on what happens and who is being affected. And just basically learned about a side of life that was kind of new to me. But Tammy kept me engaged from the beginning to the end. So it was really helpful to work with someone like that.
And she still liked me after knowing my whole life story.
Oh, that's amazing. I think, being able to share a story that is relatable and also kind of break the stigma and be open, with what happened and lessons learned is hugely important, because there's a lot of people that could be going through this that don't realize it. And so having that perspective and knowing that, you've been through it and they can reach out to you is amazing. So.
Yeah, and I hope that the book can help other people going through it, and I think it's more inspirational about overcoming tragedy, but it also, I go back to my childhood, and you kind of see how I was raised, and then how certain things affected how I parented and those decisions, and how they led to certain outcomes. And then at the end, every birthday of Robert's and every anniversary of his death, I write him a letter, so that at the end of the book, there's a series of letters that I've written to him. So I hope that it can help people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And if you want to find more, find Tammy and Sylvia, the new book, at risingaboveaddiction.com.